Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for April the 8th in the year of our Lord 2025. This is hour one of two, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country using the supreme law of the land, the Constitution for the United States of America. That is our guide. The checks and balances brilliantly put in place by the Founding Fathers, one of the peaceful restorative solutions we still have at our fingertips. And as you know, we reject revolution unless it's Jesus' revolution. Then we're in, because we follow the Prince of Peace. The good sheriff's in town, ladies and gentlemen, on your radio. Sheriff Richard Mack, founder and president of the CSPOA. That's a partnership between we the people, the citizens, and local law enforcement, especially sheriffs. How do we help them? How do they help us? Well, the CSPOA is the solution. The Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org. Sheriff, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much, Sam. It's great to be back with you this beautiful Tuesday morning. Going to be a hot one in Arizona today.
Betcha so. You got to move north, young man.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's delightful there, though, in the mornings and in the evenings. I'll tell you that right now. You just got to take a big old siesta in the middle of the day to avoid the heat. But other than that, hey, spring is spring, and that's for sure. There's so much to cover, so little time, Sheriff. I want to start out with a general question for you. It's been 90 days or so since Trump took office.
Actually,
he did so in
70. Let's be exact on the math there. So he took office January 20th. So
yep. 11
February
days in
20th,
January.
30 days. March 20th, 60 days. And then April 7th. So it's about 78 days. So,
all right.
Yeah. Amazing.
It's hard to say because in 10 days it'll be March 20th or April 20th, right?
Right. So it'd be, well, in 10 days.
Yeah, so
the 20th of the month will be 90 days.
Yeah, so there you go. And here's the question to you. You know, you heard all kinds of information that, man, we're just going to be tired of winning. It's just going to be incredible. And, know, now, what's your assessment this far in?
First of all, you have to take your hat off to him because he's one of the few presidents and politicians anywhere in Washington, D.C. that actually try to do what he said he would do in his campaign.
Amen. Agreed 100%.
Yeah. So he is doing what he said he would do. I noticed Rand Paul voted against his tariffs, and I guessed pretty much why, and it is because I looked it up, what Rand Paul's rationale was. The other three supposed Republicans like Mitchell and Murkowski and Collins.
Yeah, they're just clowns and want to, oppose Trump at every level.
They don't, and none of those three know the Constitution whatsoever. I mean, not one iota. But Rand said tariffs are taxes. But I think he's a little bit wrong there because they're not taxes on the American people. They're taxes on foreign countries.
Yeah, but what he would say is that businesses don't pay taxes, people do. And so, yes, it's a tariff at the border on those foreign countries, but the fact is it just means, hey, you'll pay more when your product comes to market, and that's true.
It will, yeah.
And
right.
So it is a tax. Here's the point, though. It's an indirect tax compared to a direct tax. And I support the indirect tax every time. That's the Founding Fathers' way. They didn't want to have taxes tied to people's dossiers or tied to people's personal lives or tied to people's finances. They wanted indirect taxation. So even though it's a tax, I support it. But what I don't support is adding it to all the other taxes that we're facing. And that's where I think Donald's making a big mistake right now. If he shut down the IRS and then said, I'm going to crank up the tariffs, I think everybody would be applauding. Right now, people are just freaking because it's just a tax added to all the other taxes. We've received relief from nowhere, right?
But the purpose of a tariff is to make the playing field in trade even and fair.
I agree.
You look at these foreign countries that use forced labor, and the people make $3.10 an hour, and of course they're going to have cheaper products because their industry is the labor is so cheap.
Well, yeah, and their quality of life isn't the same, though. You and I want to live in a nice, decent home with air conditioning, and we want to have nice food, and we want to have a nice warm bed, and, heating in the winter. And, hey, a lot of those things aren't affordable or available to, the $3.50 an hour worker, right?
Right, of course. So, but again, so it's a different tax, and I'm not so certain that
I agree
that the United States Congress has control of that. Because if you had to go to Congress every time you wanted to make the playing field fair on trade, you're dealing with 100 different countries, and so how do you do that? And I'm not against the CEO of the federal government having involvement in that and a lot of control over it. It's simply trade, and trying to get a bill passed by Congress every single time for every single country, I'm not sure I agree with Rand Paul on that one, but anyway, it's moving
the U.S.
forward.
Constitution, the U.S. Constitution,
yes,
gives Congress the power to impose tariffs. Article 1, Section 8 enumerates the powers of Congress and includes the following clause. Here it is: the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excise, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. And they say that the imposts and excise shall be uniform throughout the United States.
I didn't hear the word tariff.
This clause grants Congress the authority to impose duties. That's a type of tax that includes tariffs on imports and exports, and requires that these be uniform across the United States. Congress's power to regulate commerce with foreign nations also includes the ability to impose tariffs. So there you have it. It's clearly a congressional responsibility. However, I agree with Rand Paul that, hey, Congress should have a say and should be involved. I agree 100%. Well, and I agree that tariffs are supposed to be low. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, constitutionally, that has to happen. So, yeah, keep going.
I agree that tariffs should be low. They should be consistent, though. And here's the problem. When you start as a single man whipping tariffs around and changing the tariffs, today it's on, tomorrow it's off, tomorrow it's delayed, the next day it's on, the next day it's more, the next day it's less. Oh, I'm going to meet with so-and-so. That's the reason that it's a congressional discussion, because it shouldn't be all over the map. So when is tariffs becoming kind of a weapon versus when is it to stabilize commerce and the free enterprise economic engine? The two are at odds. And so I would submit that Rand Paul's right on the point. Here's the point that I would make to Rand Paul, though. Your congressional leaders, Republican House and Senate leaders, are part of the deep state, and they are preventing President Trump from accomplishing anything at all. They're slow walking everything. They haven't done a single thing. They've been at it for 90 days, 100 days, whatever you want to call it. They started January 3rd, so February, March, April. They've already been at it almost 100 days. A couple days, it'll be 100 days. And I don't see that Congress has hardly done anything at all. And if Congress wants to jump to Trump's aid and codify a lot of what he's doing, that makes sense to me. I agree Congress should have a say. But I also go back and say, what is the president to do when he can't make any moves? What could Trump do? Let's just ask this fundamental question to make my point. What could Trump do that everybody would be like, you know what? That's reasonable. I support that. That's constitutional. That's the American way. That's okay to put America first. Is there a single item President Trump could do where people could be happy? And I don't think so. I can't think of one.
No.
Can you, Sheriff?
No, I really can't either.
I mean, even if he said the sky was blue, they'd be like, only on some days. Some days it's black when a storm's coming in. Some days it's gray and overcast. And they would argue about that. I mean, what could Trump say or do where they'd be like, hey, that makes good sense? I mean, I don't think there's a single action he could take that wouldn't have a massive group of dissenters. I don't care what the issue is.
Yeah.
Even if what could be the simplest issue that he could do? The simplest of all.
Right.
Can you think of one?
Yeah, there's got to be something like if he were to increase Social Security benefits, I think he'd get a lot of support from both sides there.
But it would violate the Constitution.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. You can pick things that he could do that could make people happy. If you gave everybody, $1 gazillion, you'd have a couple of dissenters, but most people would be grateful. Let's take a quick break. Come back. Let's think about it, though. What could he do that's constitutional, moral, right, good, that would improve the country, that he might get actually even a majority of support for? I can't think of a single item.
Mr. President,
Senator from Kentucky.
reserving the right to object. I lived for 4 months in Asheville, worked at the VA hospital, still have fond feelings for Western North Carolina. But the thing is the reason why we won't do this in a responsible way is because the Senate voted to send all your money to Ukraine. I mean, they voted to send $200 billion to Ukraine. I've been all over the mountains of Appalachia. When I ask people, would you rather that your senators take care of you here in Asheville or here in Pikeville, here in Appalachia, would you rather them send your money to Ukraine? I don't get anybody wanting to send a penny to Ukraine. Look, you can have all kinds of sympathy in the world for Ukraine, hostility towards Russia being the aggressor nation, but we don't have the money. We're $2 trillion in the hole. Interest this year is going to be $1 trillion. And as far as passing this, I'm willing to let it pass today. He's going to object to passing his own bill today simply because it gets paid for. I'm willing to let the bill pass, but take some of the fluff and boondoggle subsidies from the Green New Deal and put it into here. The money's sitting here. We put it into here for disasters. We help Asheville today.
As you are aware, America is divided over every fault line possible. This is intentionally fostered by those who do not love God, family, or country. We believe a peaceful future as a free people absolutely depends on civility. Clarion Call for Civility is looking for funding and volunteers at every level to make our hopes and efforts a reality. Please donate, sign our pledge, and help us in our sacred cause. Please visit callforcivility.com for more details. Callforcivility.com.
Bypass the mainstream narrative with Liberty News Radio at libertynewsradio.com. Engage with charismatic hosts live or on demand. We cover the crucial news focused on God, family, and country. News that other networks simply refuse to use. Think of LNR's hard-hitting news and podcast at your fingertips, anytime, anywhere. Join us at libertynewsradio.com. Empower your day with the truth, because the truth will set you free. libertynewsradio.com.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Bushman, Sheriff Richard Mack on your radio. I can't think of a single thing that Trump could do that would keep God's laws, that would be constitutional, in other words, the law of the land, that wouldn't be opposed till the cows come home. I mean, is there anything he could do that could make the majority of the people happy? A single item. I mean, even if he stood up and said, I think we ought to pray more, people would riot. If he stood up and said lower interest rates, people would riot and say he's tampering with the Fed. Can't do that. Don't you dare. The Fed's independent. What could President Trump say or do where the majority of the American people would go along? And I've known this for decades, Sheriff, but I'll tell you where I learned it the most. You know, we had on that little boy's DJ, his father last week. And basically all they said is, hey, this kid's got cancer. Now, this kid, I don't know what his race is. His dad's half black and half Korean, I think, or something like that. Yeah, good work, Liz. Thank you. Korean. Okay, I don't care what race or color he is, but here's my point. He's not white. And his son's not white either, which I'm okay with. I don't care. I don't give a rip about that. All I'm telling you is, and this kid, DJ, rolls in, little teeny kid, terminal cancer, beating it so far. Kid wants to be a Secret Service agent or whatever, wants to make a difference for his country. His country is America, by the way, not Korea, not America. He grew up here. Okay. They can't even celebrate this poor cancer-stricken child. They can't even support saying, hey, we're going to give you an honorary Secret Service appointment because, you know what, we want to make your life good. We want to let you know that this is America. You can have dreams. You can have hopes. You can have, and they literally rejected this young man with cancer who's not even white. Now, I don't know what part of the totem pole you got to be on for this. You got to be a different race. You got to be gay, lesbian, bisexual. I don't know what you got to be to get kudos these days. But here's my point. They reject this kid. Is there a single thing we can agree on? I think even if they agree with something, they'll reject it because we say it. It's gotten that bad, Sheriff. And let me typify the point and then let you respond by this story. I don't know if you know, but Florida Rep. Luna, Anna Paulina Luna, basically got in kind of a fight with Mike Johnson over this proxy voting standoff. The idea is they're saying, hey, we got to be able to vote by proxy, especially if we're home for legitimate reasons like we just had a baby or something like this. We need to vote from home. Mike Johnson says, no, can't do it, can't vote remotely, can't have someone vote on your behalf. We did that during COVID, and it was abused so bad we're not doing it again. And Luna says, look, coming to the modern century, Mike, you're off your rock. We got to do this. Mike says, no, the Constitution says we have to gather and we can't change this. But now the headline says House Republicans reach deal in proxy voting standoff. A tentative deal could bring end to the standoff, delayed voting on other matters. So they literally shut down for a whole week because Luna created I don't know what you want to call it, a opposition. Some Democrats joined her, and they shut down Johnson. Johnson freaked and shut the whole House down for like a week. Insanity. Now, I don't even know why we're devolved into this clown show. They haven't been doing anything that Trump wants done or things that I think need to be done. I agree that we need to move Congress into the 21st century to some degree, but the problem is this whole battle just typifies what could you do if you were president that could make the majority of the people happy? Or a significant number, 80%, whatever. I can't find a single thing, Sheriff, and I've been looking for a couple of days now.
Yeah, and I think the Democrats have proven horribly that they're going to fight the Republicans and the president on anything. It doesn't matter what it is, just like DJ, the little boy, who is also deputized by Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd.
Which is great news.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's fun. What does it hurt? Why can't we celebrate something like that?
Well, and why can't we celebrate life with this young boy? But the Democrats are not going to do anything that is going to give any credit to Trump or the Republicans. That's the number one rule. They've made that very clear. They're not going to be decent. They're not going to be friendly. They're not going to take a moment out of their stupid agenda, their stupid addiction of we will oppose all Republican things. I mean, Sam, how many times do they go back in history and see that Nancy Pelosi and Charles Schumer have said the exact same things that Republicans have said recently?
That's right. Agreed.
In their careers. It happens all the time because they don't care. They're going to be the biggest liars and the biggest hypocrites because they believe that their job is to oppose anything Republican, whether they agreed with it once in their careers or not, or whether it's a good idea or not, or whether it's something that is constitutional. So they made it really clear their ridiculous and cruel reaction to this little boy, DJ. And it's so it's not just sad, it is absolutely pathetic and a disgrace that they have no moral compass. They only have a compass that opposes the president and or the Republicans. It's astonishing, Sam, that they've allowed themselves to become so debased.
Well, and to me, the American people need to see this. And they need to start to say, look, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. The party's over. And I'm going to stand for principle. And you know what? How dare you just oppose everything all the time good because it comes from Trump? Your Trump derangement syndrome has got to stop. Your hatred of Donald Trump has got to stop. I mean, what single item could I put up in America today that I could get the majority of the people to say, you know what, I like that. That's a good idea. And I'll give you an example. I create a Clarion Call for Civility website, callforcivility.com. I can't get a whole lot of people to join that. We look at this DJ kid. We can't get anybody to rally behind that. We look at Paulina Luna's option to say, look, we've got to modernize Congress. People can't be in Washington, D.C. Think how much fuel. Think how much jet fuel for the environmentalists, for all 535 members of Congress to roll in all the time, every week, go home and come back and go home and come back. And okay. And, where are the environmentalists on that? How much money would we save in time and dollars? Okay. We can't get anything modernized or changed. Well, if you look at the Constitution, you're supposed to have a rep every so many people. My heavens, would have 10 times the reps that we have now if we really paid attention to that. So you look at that and you say, you got to modernize it. Would you rather have your people in Washington, D.C. all the time? Well, every time I call a Washington, D.C. office, I can't even get anybody to answer. Just get voicemail and stuff all the time. So are they even there? I don't know. Are they voting? I don't know. Can you get a hold of them and find out where they stand on something? I doubt it. Okay, and we've got this problem so bad. I don't know what single item we could stand for. Money spending or, tied to finances or not, that people could agree on. I can't even tell you ups up and downs down, or people would argue with me and say, that's just your perception, Sam. And would be off on some random rabbit hole of psychosis. I don't know. It's just shocking to me. And I don't mean to beat this issue to death, but I really think until we solve that, nothing's going to happen positive. We got derailed over whether people can vote remotely after having a baby, Sheriff. We got shut down for a week over that.
Yeah, no kidding. And I don't know about that. I'm still 50-50 on it, because I think it would create some abuse. And how do you know if I have their permission to vote for them? I don't know. And the bottom line is, what else do they have to do? I understand the baby thing, and if you're ill and whatnot. But remember when they were impeaching Andrew Johnson? One of the congressmen at the time was sick, and they carried him in there, and he voted, and I think he voted opposite of what he had told them he was going to do, because they were hoping to get his vote to make the impeachment go good, and I think he voted the other way around, if I remember my history correct. But I do know that a sick congressman was carried in there, and you had to do it that way. It had to be in person, and he couldn't write a letter or whatever else that they could do back then. Technology certainly is different today, but I don't know. I kind of am siding with, if you got to be there, And
so let me throw something out for you. How many people is a representative supposed to represent in the Constitution?
I think it's 35,000 or so, something around there.
All right. So the state of Utah has like 3.5 million people in it. So we should have 10 reps, right?
Yeah. And you only have, what, 3?
Well, 35,000 times 10 would be 350,000, right? Wouldn't need 100 reps for Utah, wouldn't we?
Yeah. There'd be a lot more. There's no question. It would be in the thousands. And I think somebody figured it out once, it would be 7,000 congressional reps. But I'm not sure.
3,500,000 divided by 35,000, right? Would have 100 reps in the state of Utah alone. So I guess my question becomes, what if we just jettison the 17th Amendment? What if we have them meet at their own state buildings, and the vote was basically taken paper ballot and then turned in to the feds? And what if we were to say, you're not going back to Washington anymore. There's too many reps, no need. Puts people in too much lobbying scenarios, let them be home with their constituents. There's a lot we could do on that front. Let's talk about it, because I think things are going to have to change. Can we just have them always go back to Washington? Is it safe to have them all in one big building? I mean, if something were to crazy happen, you might take out 435 key elected officials all at once. Let's talk about it. The good sheriff's with me, Sheriff Richard Mack. Then I want to talk about the IRS and a couple other people getting together on immigration. People are rioting over that one, too. We'll tell you all about it in seconds on your radio.
How would you like to help this program reach more people and earn silver at the same time? Call or text 801-669-2211 for complete details.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. Wall Street and overseas markets appear to be regaining their footing after big sell-offs prompted by fears of a global trade war. Wall Street has opened sharply higher this morning. Japan's Nikkei soared over 6%. Japan is among countries pursuing trade talks following President Trump's tariff hikes. China, though, remains unyielding, and President Trump threatens additional 50% tariffs on Chinese imports. Amid the stock market's turmoil, LPL Financial's Adam Turnquist is urging investors to hang in there.
These are not the times you want to be selling equities.
Never a good idea to sell low and buy high. Attorney General Pam Bondi calls it a landmark victory for the rule of law, referring to a Supreme Court ruling on the deportation of illegal aliens suspected of belonging to criminal gangs. The ruling, one of two high court decisions favoring the White House.
In a major legal victory for Donald Trump, justices on the high court allowed his administration to use the 18th century Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan migrants. However, migrants must be given reasonable time to go to court before deportation. The high court was split 5-4. Separately, Chief Justice John Roberts agreed to pause a midnight deadline for the administration to return a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Greg Clugston, Washington.
The death toll at least 23 from severe storms that have devastated parts of the South as well as the Midwest. Florida has won its first NCAA championship since 2007. The Gators beat Houston 65-63 in the men's NCAA title game last night. And watching Wall Street, the Dow is up 1,164 points, the NASDAQ ahead 590 points, and the S&P is up 155, all gains of more than 3%. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, the timeshare cancellation guy and founder of Wesley Financial Group, and I want to set the record straight. I am not an attorney. I've never wanted to be an attorney, and the truth is I really don't even like attorneys. If I sound like an attorney, I'll apologize. But what I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare, and I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call. I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare, or you'll pay nothing. Attorneys, this was meant to be funny, so please don't sue me, especially my friend Kenneth from Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Call now for your free timeshare exit info kit. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454.
Introducing Managed IT Services from NPI. We offer top-notch data backup and recovery, email spam protection, and network security tailored to your needs and budget. With 20-plus years of experience in the medical field, our HIPAA-certified consultants know what it takes to protect sensitive information. Don't settle for less. Give us a call at 801-706-6980 and experience the difference with Managed IT Services. Remember, your IT support should be fast, efficient, and reliable.
Introducing PrepStartsNow.com, your ultimate guide to readiness and peace of mind. We offer practical preparedness tools, training, and education to take your family's household readiness to the next level. Browse the prep shop for essential products, check out our planning guides, and stay informed with our prep blog. Visit PrepStartsNow.com and subscribe to our emails for exclusive offers, new products, and future events. Remember, preparedness begins with PrepStartsNow.com.
As the United States boldly stepped forward in the glorious light provided by its new Constitution in 1787, the nations of the earth were in awe of the newfound strength and hope of this free land. Today, the nation stands at a crossroads. A divergence from the original intent put forth in the United States Constitution has brought grave threats to our beloved nation. A miracle is needed if the United States is to survive. That miracle is again the pure application of the United States Constitution. I'm Scott Bradley. In my To Preserve the Nation book and lecture series, I bring forth truths that will help raise up a new generation of statesmen like those noble Americans who founded this land. Vigorous application of these principles will invigorate and restore the nation, and we may become again the freest, most prosperous, most respected, and happiest nation on earth. Visit topreservethenation.com to begin that restoration.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, the good Sheriff Richard Mack and yours truly, Sam Bushman, on the radio. Hard-hitting talk at your fingertips, serious questions on the table, ladies and gentlemen. It's my assertion that I don't think you could find a single thing you could do, whether it be spending money, whether it be not, whether it be just an opinion, whether it be make a statement. You can't do a single thing that would make the majority of the people happy. And I don't mean that you can always make every single person happy, but I mean, could there be a single item where, hey, 70, 80, a significant majority of the people are like, yeah, I agree with that. That's good. I like that. I don't know that there's a single item that you could find you could do that with. And that, to me, is a very sad, sad state of affairs in America. But I'm glad the House Republicans made a deal on this proxy voting standoff, because I'm telling you right now, what's interesting to me about that is I think Anna's right. I think we need to modernize. If you took 35,000 citizens per representative, Sheriff, California would have 1,142 reps. Utah would have 100, just for instance, for sake of understanding. Texas, about 20 million people. They're going to have, 500 and something reps.
Let me clarify this and read what the Constitution actually
Please, sure.
says about it. I found it. It was pretty easy. It's Article 1, Section 2. And it says I got to find my place again, but I'm in the right section, so this is going to be quick. Okay, the number of representatives shall not exceed one for every 30,000. 30,000. I was close.
Okay, so it's not so shall not exceed one per every 30,000.
Correct.
So you can't have more than 30,000. So less you could have, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, keep going.
So it's one for every 30,000, basically.
Yeah, but it says shall not exceed. So that means you can't have, if you have a 30,000 group, you can't have two.
Correct.
But if you had 60,000 people, could you just still have one?
I don't know. Maybe that's what they've done. Maybe they've
just allowed that. So what else does it say? Does it say anything more about it?
But each state shall have at least one representative. One representative. And until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose three. And then it goes on, Massachusetts 8, and then when vacancies happen. So I'm not sure I understand what it's saying, though, when it says one shall not exceed one for 30,000. So can you have one for, like you said, 60,000? Well, right now it's 300 and something thousand, isn't it?
Okay, according to Article I, Section 2, shall not exceed one for every 30,000. However, each state is guaranteed at least one representative. As the country has grown, the number of reps has been capped by law rather than by constitutional amendment. The Permanent Apportionment Act of 1929 fixed the number of voting members in the House at 435, which is still in effect today. So what they've done is they've capped the number of reps by this extra law. See, I have a problem with that because they never even did it constitutionally.
Right.
They say these seats are conducted every 10 years after the census to account for population changes, which means the exact number of citizens per rep can vary. Right now, on average, it's 700 to 750,000 people per rep, which would make sense. Utah's got about a little over 3 million people, and it's got 4 reps, more than the Constitutional's original provision. So there you have it. What they've done is they've capped it by law. They call it law. But to me, unless you change the Constitution, I don't think that they can really do that. That's the part of the problem that we face. Yeah. Anyway, my whole point is if we were to have our true representation, I can't get a hold of my rep. Why? Because it's not 1 in 30,000 anymore. I've got to compete with 750,000 other people to deal with my rep, and therefore he's just not going to talk to me anymore, We've diluted that to the point where I can't even get a hold of my rep, much less sit down and have a conversation or let my feelings be known. The only thing I can do is call Capitol Hill, get a voicemail, and leave a message that they can then let some staffer either ignore or include in a general tally or something like that. But 90% of what my interaction with my representative is gone over this. And then when they have 20,000 illegal or 20 million illegals in the country, and then they take another census, it's going to get so ski-wampus to the illegal vote and even more diluted than it already is, to the point where no wonder we don't have any control. The states don't have control of the senators anymore, and we don't have control of the House representatives anymore, because they've changed the game so many times from the original intent of the founders to where there's no hope in that regard, Sheriff. And then I can't say anything that anybody can even agree with anymore.
Well, one thing I think that you touched on that is absolutely true. They can't amend the Constitution by fiat or by legislation.
They just did since 1929?
Yeah, 1929. And so that's, no. Clarifying a provision of the Constitution with legislation, no. If you're going to change the Constitution, there is a absolute provision for that, and you have to have a certain amount of votes. You have to have the 2/3 or the 3/4. I believe to amend the Constitution, you have to have 3/4. And just like when they tried to do the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment for women, and that they found out that was a farce, and that got beat because it wasn't going to just do equal rights; it was going to destroy rights. And so anyway,
yeah.
But
in other words, it was going to pit people against each other based on supposed rights, really granted privileges at intentional odds to divide the country, is what we're talking about.
My point is this: they had to go through the constitutional process to change the Constitution or to amend it. 1929, they failed to do that, and so. I don't think we should have one for every 30,000. I think that would be, how could they possibly do it? How could they meet? They would have to vote.
Easy. You don't meet in person. You stay in your state and you meet in your state. You don't need to meet. You got 50 locations to meet.
Yeah. Quit going to Washington, D.C. so much and stay home and get your work done.
Well, that's the point. And then I've got one office. I don't need, two. Right now, I don't even know where my congressman is. In Utah, in Washington, D.C., I call and just get voicemails everywhere. Or I get always traveling and on the road. You can't talk to him. He'll get back to you. I get voicemails. I leave voicemails. Nobody calls me back. Nobody can make a difference. Hey, when you take it from, I'm just trying to think what you would call it, from 1 in 30,000 to 1 in 750,000, it's obvious why I don't have any representation.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, you said, were you just guessing that it's 1 for 750,000, or is that what it is right now?
I'm just saying that's what it has been a few years ago. I'm about to divide it right now. So I'm going to take, how many people in America do you want to count?
Well,
350 million?
I guess, yeah. That sounds correct.
I mean, I don't know how to really gauge it because I don't know how many people are in the country. I don't know how many of them are illegal. I don't know all that kind of stuff. But if you take 350 million and you divide it by 435, which is really the reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
804,000. So the numbers that I had before were real, but they must have been taken at the last census, okay? Because that's when you really do that breakdown.
Right.
And what it looked like then was 750,000. So basically now it's 800,000 on the average. And I think that's probably right. We got 4 congressmen in the state of Utah, and we've got about 3.5 million people. That's about 800,000 apiece, give or take, right? Or a million apiece. So instead of 30,000 people that could go to your congressman, now you've got to have a million, 800,000 to a million people go to your congressman. No wonder he can't pay attention to you. No wonder he's got to put a voicemail in place. No wonder he's got to have a gazillion staffers to deal with that many people and everything else. What we've done is we've said we're not going to have the representation we used to, but we're going to beef up their staffs. They have staffs between 7 and 20 staff members per congressional/senator seat, whatever. And so what they've done is they've said we're going to cap the number of representation points that you have, but we're just going to surround them with all kinds of gatekeepers and thugs and people who aren't elected. They're appointed and they're hired and they're whatever. We've created a big problem. And I say the only way is to empty D.C. and to start having people meet in their states and to start giving us proper representation. If we don't do that, no wonder we don't have any representation. No wonder the lobbyists can just roll to Washington, D.C. If you did it this way, the lobbyists would have to go to all 50 states and talk to each congressman or senator that's in their districts and everything else. Right now, we just gather them all and let the lobbies attack them, and you and I can't talk to them. All right, when we come back, we'll break this down a little bit more. Is there a single thing I could say or do as president of the United States that everybody, when I say everybody, meaning the majority, would be like, we agree. That's great. I'm trying to still think of it, and I challenge anybody, come up with something for me. Hang tight. Liberty Roundtable Live.
Former Sheriff Richard Mack recounts in his book The Proper Role of Law Enforcement how he came to realize while working as a beat cop how wrong the all-too-common orientation of police officers is when they think of their job as being to write tickets and arrest people. Richard Mack tells of his personal transformation from by-the-number cop to Constitution-conscious defender of citizen safety and freedoms. Learn what it really means to serve and protect. Purchase your copy at CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org.
Do you know what is great about America? Ask an Immigrant. Ask an Immigrant is a new podcast dedicated to helping Americans, especially our youth, value, appreciate, and be grateful for the freedoms we have here in America. Join host Lydia Wallace-Nuttall as she interviews immigrants from around the world to discover their inspiring personal stories about why they came to America. To learn more about why America is the most prosperous, greatest country in the world, download the Loving Liberty app or go to lovingliberty.net.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody better having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. So is there a single thing that the President of the United States could say or do that the majority of the American people and or government officials would agree on, accept, champion, whatever you want to call it? So I asked this question to ChatGPT, and here's what I got back. Hey, it'll be really hard, but disaster relief efforts might be one. And my response is no, I don't think so. Because you get the Davy Crockett discussion, number one. A lot of people would say you don't have authority to do that at all. Number two, you'd find out that FEMA has been doing the bidding of, say, the Joe Biden clowns and skipping all Trump supporters. So even that's become all political. So that's a non-starter, ChatGPT. You just might not be aware of all that. Support for veterans. I agree with that. But what about the veterans that were promoted at Trump's thing? The Democrats didn't give any support to them at all. Not even a little kid with cancer, for crying out loud.
No.
Infrastructure development. I don't think so. To me, the Communist Manifesto rejects 90% of the infrastructure stuff they want to do. Public health measures. Oh, they're rioting over Bobby Kennedy. That won't work. Educational initiatives. Well, only if we can shut it down. But the biggest unions in the world don't want education shut down. You and I and the American people do. The president does, but see, that's a huge divide. National security. We can't agree on national security. We can't even agree that we're going to deport illegal crime gang terrorist thugs. Condemning hate and violence. I don't even know what that means anymore with the Southern Poverty Law Center perverting all reality. We don't even know how to have a discussion about that anymore. Promoting bipartisanship and unity. No one's doing that. You would think in at least when Trump was speaking that the things that they could accept they would do, but they didn't do that either. So I'm saying to you, President or Sheriff Mack, I don't think there's a single thing we can find that they could agree with. Or accept or tolerate or understand or agree on or champion or whatever term you want to use for this. I can't find a single thing. Is there a single law-abiding thing good thing that the president of the United States could do or say that the majority of the people would get involved with, support, or champion? I can't find one.
Yeah. Unless it was Donald Trump decided to resign, they would probably agree with that one.
Yeah, but there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't, though. I wouldn't. If he resigned, I'd say there's no need for him to resign. There'd be a ton of Trump supporters that would say, wait, we elected you, right?
I was thinking of just the Democrat side, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so I'm talking about America here. The Democrats would love it if Donald Trump said, we're not getting rid of the education department, we're going to double funding for it. The Democrats would be elated. But the rest of us, the 87 million people or whatever you want to call it that voted for Trump this last time, would be frustrated and mad. So taking all factions, is there anything? I mean, even if I were to say, let's pray on Christmas and not have war for one day on Christmas. Back in 1940, the Germans and the Americans on both sides, it wasn't 1940, it was the 40s. The Americans and the Germans said, let's set aside our guns. Let's just sing for Christmas. And they did. And it was an incredible historical event. What if I said that now? They'd riot. They'd go, you can't talk about Jesus and government. You can't talk about prayer. How dare you? We're going to sue you. And they'd lawfare me to death and shut me right down and run me out on a rail, Sheriff. Right?
Yeah. I did want to go back for 1 minute, though.
Sure.
Tariffs. And we've been discussing quite a few things, and especially about Trump and tariffs. But I think that Trump is looking very intelligent and very correct.
I agree.
Because if it's true that the tariffs are bringing these other countries to the table, because I don't think the numbers were lying when it showed the percentage of the difference between American tariffs and the tariffs other countries are charging.
No, those numbers are factual, and it is forcing people to sit down at the table. Trump's right on this. In fact, to make your point really quick, Peter Navarro is battling with a lot of these clowns over some of these tariffs and stuff like that. And it's a big old battle. Trump's right on this. What Trump needs is Congress to codify what he's doing. That's all that needs to happen here. Trump's not wrong to say I'm going to lead with his example. Trump's not wrong to say I'm going to sit down and negotiate with these people and try to make it better. Trump's right on this. Okay?
Well,
and if he says it's a financial emergency, he has the right even to take the lead, and then there's a window in which Congress can jump to the table. They're slow walking it. Congress, I don't even know what they're focused on. This last week, they've been focused on, we're going to just throw our sucker in the dirt and go home for a week because I'm mad at Polyluma, says Mike Johnson, right? So we melted down and wasted a whole week. I mean, in a congressional session, there's 52 weeks, right?
Well, yes.
We literally shut down a whole week because Mike didn't like Luna's push. And Luna shut him down, and he got mad, threw a sucker in the dirt, and shut down the House for like a week over this thing. That's what kind of brought this up to me about there's nothing you can do that people could or would, really go along with, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and why would anyone look at the numbers that you and I were just talking about of the disparity between these foreign countries, what they charge us and what we charge them on tariffs?
Well, you should be able to agree in 2 seconds as a country that, hey, whatever China's charging us, if we match them, that's fine, that's fair, that's good, that's right. That's Congress can't agree. They won't even back Trump in it. Now everybody's at odds on it.
But trade is vital to the world economy.
Of course it is.
It's part of economics. It's economics 101. Trade increases the size of the pie.
Yes. Trade also brings countries together in peaceful diplomatic ways.
Yes. And so I'm totally on board with what he's trying to do. Obviously, the stock market crashed for 3 days in a row. And
but I don't think, hold on, let me stop you there for a second. It did, but I don't think it would have had to have. If Congress would have came back and codified what Trump's doing and saying, hey, you know what, we need to make this a true, then it wouldn't be Trump out on a limb all by himself. It reminds me of the sheriff that stands up for your rights and nobody in the community backs the sheriff, and then the sheriff gets unelected next time. Okay, we can't leave these leadership people out in the breeze. We've got to back up and say, hey, Trump's tariffs are a good thing. Now, Congress, get moving.
Yeah.
And let's get rid of the IRS on the other side, which we'll get to in just a second. Well, Peter Navarro had a big old debate. Clashes with CNBC hosts over effectiveness of Trump's tariffs. Sarah Arnold over at townhall.com with the piece, but there's a big old battle. Peter schooled him. But again, nobody can even agree on anything like this.
Well, and there's something about the Republicans here that we probably need to make mention. During the confirmation process for Trump's cabinet, not a single Democrat voted for any of his people. Not a single one. None. And maybe Fetterman did once or twice for somebody here and there. But even he, it appears, he was towing the party line. When this happened the opposite direction, many Republicans voted for Obama's cabinet positions and Biden's. They tried to be fair and they tried to be honest about it. And it wasn't like a big slew of them, but there were Republicans every time who voted, even for Supreme Court justices in the past. Republicans have sided with Democrats and said, well, you know what? I don't agree with everything you're doing here, but you have a right to pick this person. The person is
right. We've vetted them. We've vetted them to where there's no serious problems, and now our opinions need to be set aside here. Well, that's not happening right now. They're battling Trump over everything. Headline says this: Hawaii's Senator Brian Schatz is blocking more than 300 of President Trump's nominees from swift confirmation votes, despite his criticism that when it was the Biden administration that Republicans were doing that. Now he's basically doing the same thing he criticized Republicans for doing. Do you see the pattern? They can't get along. I mean, I could even wake up and say it's a good morning and that'd be, no, it's not. It's a horrible morning.
Right.
It's a horrible morning, Sheriff. It's awful. Why? Because Donald Trump's in office and we're trying to kick out, rapists and murderers, and we're trying to, make it fair on the world trade stage, and we're trying to, it's horrible, Sheriff. So I can't even agree that it's a good morning.
Yeah, they won't even support getting rid of horrible criminals.
Right.
And we're talking about the horrible ones. We're talking about murders and rapes and child molesters, and they will not support getting rid of those criminals out of America, out of New York City even. It's absolute lunacy.
Yeah, they're fixing to give them a stipend to stay even, Sheriff.
Of course they will. Yeah, and the hate has just gone way too overboard. And this is what happens when you're controlled by hate instead of reason. And
I'm gonna pose my question again because I want everybody to think about it, and I want anybody to email me, libertyroundtable@gmail.com. Can you find a single thing? Here's the question. Is there a single law-abiding good thing that the President of the United States could say or do that the majority of the people and government officials would agree with, much less champion? Is there a single thing that you can find? And I'm telling you, the more I dig, the more I'm convinced there is not one. They have done such a masterful job of promoting the Communist Manifesto, promoting the destruction of America, the battle of the culture wars, to where people don't even know what's up and what's down. If I said I think we ought to use the Constitution as our guide, how many people would even agree with that? How many congressional representatives or senators would even agree with that? Of all 535, and I said, we need the Constitution to govern our actions. They all swore an oath to it, but how many of them would literally agree in thought and action with that reality? Very few, and that's why we're off the rails, people. We've got to turn to God Almighty. If I said that, they'd have me, drawn and quartered? What would happen, if they had their way? But we need to promote God, family, country. We need to protect life, liberty, and property, and we better do it fast. What are the key ways you can be involved in the solutions? Go to CSPOA.org. That's the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. CSPOA.org, and become a member of the great nationwide posse today. All right, LibertyRoundtable.com, LovingLiberty.net. Spread the word, share the love. Back in a flash. God save our republic.